musician? What do you do exactly?
I play everything. Drums, guitar,
Oh my God.
bass, keyboard, sing. I have some stuff on Spotify. If you pop my name in there.
Oh, do you? All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Super interesting. I'll definitely go check it out. That's super,
If you're
super
really,
interesting.
really bored and have absolutely nothing else to do one day.
Hmm. It looks like you're also a paneristi.
A what?
A paneristi. You like panerize?
Do you know that? So you must have one too. It's funny. Most people don't notice.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I like this one a lot. Although
Yeah.
the one I've had forever is I have a Cartier, and it's no problem in the watch winder. But this one's so big, I put it in my old watch winder, and it was a little too big, and it kept hitting. And before I knew it, I had to send it in for service, and it was a little expensive because I guess it hit something on the
Yeah.
crown or whatever, and
Oh, really?
it's annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've only had this one. I got this one over the summer, but
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, compared to a Cartier, I'm sure it's much bigger and chunkier. It's just,
yeah,
that's it. Kind of links back to their identity and how they were formed and all that stuff. So makes perfect sense for a Panerai. Enough talking about watches and music. I probably need to host you for another session where we talk about watches and music,
I'm in, man.
particularly. It's
I'm in.
super interesting. Well, thank you for joining us today on
Thanks
the
for having
show.
me.
Absolutely, for this session. You have over 25 years of experience in architectural design. You brought this to Mancini Duffy team. You are currently the CEO of Mancini Duffy, and you're also a co-founder, or co-owner, I should say.
Co-owner, yeah.
Co-owner.
The company's over 100 years old, so I would
Exactly.
look really good. I either look
Exactly.
really bad for 52 or I'd look great for 120.
You contributed, your design abilities in various project types. You contribute to all these project types, including industrial facilities, corporate offices, residential, housing, retail facilities, even educational facilities. You have a vast experience in new building design and adaptive reuse of existing buildings. That's a very, very interesting dimension right there. You're active in all project development. You don't just manage the show. You're actually active there. You roll your sleeves back and you dive into these projects and the different phases, from initial design all the way up to construction. You also worked in the construction field, and you come from actually a family where your father and your grandfather, I believe, were independent contractors as well.
Absolutely. Yep.
Super interesting there. And then you joined Mancini Duffy back in 2012.
2011, but yeah,
2011.
it was via acquisition. I was with a firm that at the time was acquired by Mancini Duffy.
Correct. You were at TSC Design for 5
Yep.
years when Mancini Duffy purchased the firm's assets in 2011. And you were named as a senior associate then, and you made your way from a senior associate to principal in 2014 to co-owner of the firm in 2017. And now you're the CEO since 2018, plus being a co-owner. You have believed in having consistency of vision and values, and probably these are some of the things that brought you to become a CEO, because you definitely work and relate back to the vision and the values that brings a company together. You always, your vision, your philosophy is never to put ourselves ahead of our client. Whether you have a vision or you have a plan, just don't put yourself or your plan ahead of the client. Always put the client first. This consistency, you believe, lets us respond to our clients quickly, clarity and authority as well. You live with your wife and you have 2 children in Paramus, New Jersey. You're into music and you are a Howard Stern's fan. That's one thing me and you don't really agree on.
I will say I used to be until about COVID, and I haven't really listened as much. He kind of went off in a direction I wasn't too crazy about. But back in the day, yeah, I used to listen. I would sit
really?
in my car in the parking lot. Yeah, last few years not so much, but
yeah. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I mean, from construction to architecture, why did you choose to go to architecture, not construction? Why didn't you not just go your own way, building a construction company versus becoming a CEO and co-owner of an architecture company. It's really
Sure.
interesting here.
Sure. So, like you mentioned, I come from a long line. My great grandfather was an immigrant here from Sicily. My grandfather had a bricklaying masonry contracting company. He worked for a while with my dad, who formed his own general contracting company. My dad had quite a bit of success. Most kids, I was pretty attached to my dad. Me and my old man spent a lot of time together. I was with him, every day off for the most part when I was a kid. And as I got older, pretty much starting in middle school or so, days off, I would go work with him, and he would give me some kind of crummy things to do, but I learned a lot, specifically throughout high school and college, where I spent every summer working for my dad. And, one project he did was he built a large multifamily building in New Jersey. It was a condo building. And because of the way it worked the first summer, it was very early on. And I learned about things like laying out footings and foundations, to pouring concrete, to digging plumbing trenches. My dad actually had me run the little machine digging holes, and they all had a good laugh at me when I dug myself onto an island. But that's what I
What year
said.
was that?
That was like 87.
How old were you when you started?
Probably like 15, 16 years old.
Wow.
Everything from that to, the following summer when the building was actually framed, spending a lot of time doing carpentry, putting together kitchens. I think I put in 52 PTAC units in every unit in that building myself. Everything from that to installing cabinets to sheetrock. And so I really learned everything about doing the work from my dad and from working for him, which at the time I didn't like. I wanted to go hang out with all my friends or get a cooler job in the mall or something at Sam Goody's, but it all turned out for the best. And the reason I went to architecture rather than construction was my being, a long line of people coming here from another country many, many years ago now. They really wanted to try and elevate the family, and my grandfather saw it as a progression that my great-grandfather came over here with, without a nickel in his pocket and was a laborer. My grandfather was able to get to the next step as a bricklayer and mason contractor. My dad was able to surpass him as a general contractor, and both my dad and my grandfather thought it was very important that if I did choose to do this for a living, I moved to the next level, which they considered architecture. And this was what I heard when I was like, I don't know, like 8 years old. So it really wasn't much of a choice.
I know what you're talking about. I get you. I hear you.
If I had been given a choice, I would have done music for a living, but it's worked out pretty well, so I can't complain. Even as a kid, my grandfather I'd go to work with my grandfather on a day off, or because they didn't have daycare back then, and he would sit me in the trailer and give me some drawings and be like, here's a piece of vellum, redraw what you see over there. So it was fairly predetermined. My father also, my dad also, to his credit, I mean, he was the best. He wanted to make sure that I kind of carved out my own legacy. He did work with his father for a while, and there's things that happen when you work with family, in particular your father, and there's a dynamic, especially among my family. The men tend to have pretty firm opinions on things, and they had their differences over the years, and my dad never wanted that for him and I. He wanted me to carve out my own thing where people would never say it was associated with him or what he did, and have my own accomplishments. Mm-hmm. And do my own thing. Now, having said that, I will tell you that when my dad was alive, I lived around, I still live there around the corner from where I grew up, and at least 2 or 3 times a week, mostly on Sundays when my dad would come over for dinner, I would just talk about what's going on, and it was great to have him as a resource for what to do. I learned a lot about running a business from him. So, yeah, I mean, not to really, I guess I'm doing too much of a deep dive, but from there I went to college, graduated, got a job at a small firm in New Jersey, worked there for a bit until I was ready to do something different, which I was presented with an opportunity to run an office with a friend of mine in New Jersey for a New York City firm. That firm was TSC. And it was great till it wasn't. And that firm did a lot of work for retail and financial clients. So as you can imagine, the fall of 2008 and beginning of 2009 was not kind to them, nor the firm. So the firm was acquired by Mancini Duffy. It quickly was an odd situation where we had two firms living as one. And I wasn't really, honestly, too keen on it. I was kind of doing my own thing there. And in the fall of 2013, my partner, Christian Giordano, joined the firm. And him and I hit it off really quickly. And he presented me with the idea that the two of us could, along with another gentleman here, Scott Harrell, buy the firm from the current ownership as they were ready to sell.
Were you excited about that acquisition? Looking back now, what do you think? You think it was the right decision? You like it? You think you should have went a different way?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously, for me, it was one of the greatest decisions I made, other than, marrying my wife and a few things like that. But it was a great decision at the time. If you had told me when I first joined Mancini that this would be where we were, I would have really laughed pretty hard about it, because I was certainly an unlikely candidate. At the time, Mancini was, and there's nothing wrong with this, but it was a very buttoned up firm, did mostly in corporate interiors work. I remember somebody one time questioning my choice in footwear in the office, and I was kind of like, is this what we're really focusing on? But I will give all the credit in the world to the previous ownership that when we first approached them with this idea, they gave us full reins to do what we wanted to do and what we needed to do to start transforming this firm.
That's before the acquisition, right?
Yes, so as you can imagine, Ralph Mancini had initially transitioned the firm to a different ownership group in, I believe, 2006. And coming off of that, and when we approached them, and let's call it 2014, 15, it took a little while to figure out how we were going to do it, how we were going to, give them what they rightfully deserved for their ownership in the firm and transition it. And it took a while. It took a while to put all those things together and to put something together that we could, swing, because I didn't have that kind of money laying around initially. So, it was, again, they were very generous. Tony, Dina, they were very generous in letting us come to an agreement, enact the agreement, and then step aside a bit to let us start running the firm, because, they had the foresight to know that we would want to run the firm differently than they did. And not that they did anything wrong about it, but there was things we wanted to do to position ourselves for where we are now. And thankfully they let us do that. So one of the really important things that they let us do was change what we do here as far as diversity of client type and work we do. When I first joined Mancini Duffy, as a result of the acquisition of my former firm, we were about 120 people. Now, through natural attrition, which sometimes happens when a merger or acquisition is not done, let's say, as well or as tactfully as it could have been done, a lot of people had left. And by the time we got to about 2014, 2015, we were about 50 people in the firm, which was good and bad. It was bad for obvious reasons, but it was good because it truly gave us an opportunity to reinvent the firm, who we were, who we are, what we do, and the kind of people we have here. Not that the people were bad or not great. A lot of those people were still here, a good chunk of them. But we were able to, like I mentioned, diversify our practice tremendously, because my background was always more in base building, large scale projects. Christian had a lot of soundstage and entertainment background. So when we combine that with what Mancini had of the corporate interiors, we already started to have a more diverse background of work. Over the years, we've brought people in to expand our practice to life sciences. We acquired a firm 2 years ago that specialized in healthcare and multifamily development. We've since organically developed an aviation practice. Retail has been tremendous for us. Restaurants have been, since COVID, restaurants have been a huge sector for us. I mentioned healthcare. There's the aviation, industrial has become huge for us. I did a side project of a self-storage building back in like 2005 or six or something like that, as kind of a favor for somebody for a couple bucks to help buy my house or something like that. And that's turned into something we do. It's not the sexiest work in the world, but I'll tell you, we've done the first all self-storage building in Manhattan in Midtown Manhattan. It's a building type that didn't exist, and we recently completed that last year. So because of all those different things, and there's more to it, hotels, hospitality, because we do so many different things, it's really helped insulate us against things like COVID, things like the bizarre events of the last 4 years or so that's happened since COVID, because it's been great. We literally, if one sector is a little bit down, another one's up. So, and we still do what Mancini was typically known for high-end corporate interiors. We do a lot of those, and we do a fantastic job at it. We have people here that do it. But it's been one of the ways that's helped us be successful over the years. The other way was investing tremendously in technology. We had a young man here that started working here, I believe, in 2015, and he had a couple ideas about using VR, using 3D printing, these things. And we were like, sure. We gave him a budget, gave him some things to do. And that, by the way, is one of the examples of the previous ownership allowing us to do kind of crazy things. Like we took an office and converted it to, we called it at the time Design Lab, which has now become the centerpiece of which now has become the centerpiece of our office and everything we do. We have on-staff software developers. We have our own patented software now called Tool Belt that we use, and it's changed our entire design process. We work differently than any other architect. Our entire design process is either done in VR or AR or as walkthroughs. Some people get a little queasy about the idea of putting on goggles, but we have our own software that ties Revit into this engine and allows people to experience the space. And it's not just like, a lot of what we were doing early on with VR was kind of using it as a post-production thing to, really almost the way you would use like a kick-ass rendering. Now we don't do that. Now it's from day one start of the project, we are in an immersive environment, and we're taking people in, again, on day one in a whitewash environment so they can feel how it is and what the space looks like, what it feels like. And as the design progresses, we add things. But early on, we put it in that whitewash environment because we don't want people wondering about if that's blue or red or green. We want them to focus on the environment. And recently, we've developed that into an AR. I say we, it's not me, it's the people much smarter than me, but we've developed that into an AR platform that allows us to go on site with AR goggles, and in the environment in which we're going to build, you can switch on and off what the new layout's going to be. So you can physically walk the space looking at what it's going to be, what that wall is going to look like.
Is that an extension to Revit, your software? Is just an extension, a plug-in to Revit? That
it does tie into Revit. It does rely on the Revit model. So It relies on the Revit model, and it brings or a Rhino model, other models, and we bring it into our software, the Tool Belt.
You don't use Lumion, right?
We've used it in the past. We use it to render out things. Sometimes I believe that's one of the engines that's used to produce some of the higher end render or environments in AR or VR. But we use, if there's a software out there, we use it. We have, like I said, we have two guys here they're architecturally trained, but they really have a software development background. So what's great about it is because it's ours, we could change it whenever we want.